Welcome to the Publishing Performance Show, the podcast that helps self-published authors turn their passion into a profit. Now, I'm your host, Teddy Smith, and if you're serious about building a sustainable business, then you're in the right place. Every week, I sit down with successful authors, industry experts, and publishing professionals who share their exact strategies they use right now to how they've grown their business, grow their readership, increase their book sales, and essentially to make a bit more money. Now, whether you're just starting out or you're looking to scale your existing publishing business, you'll walk away from every episode with actionable insights you can implement immediately. Now, if you're new here, it would really help me out if you could subscribe either on Apple or Spotify or YouTube or wherever you are. Just simply hit the subscribe button. It really helps the show to get more reach, which means we can get better guests for you and we can help you out in more ways. All right, let's dive into this episode. Hi everyone and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Today I'm really happy to be joined by Dave King, who is the writer of Self-Editing for Fiction Writers, which sold over 200,000 copies and has been translated into over 4 languages. So thank you for joining us, Dave.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
So you've sold 200,000 copies of your book. That's amazing. Tell us a bit about that book and how it came about.
Well, curious enough, it's been adopted as a textbook, which is eternal life for a book. And it has only sold 6,000 or 7,000 copies a year, but has done it for 30 years and has crossed 200,000 copies. It's been translated into Italian, Taiwanese. There are currently deals in the works to have it translated into Japanese and Korean. There was for a time talk of having it translated into Mandarin for sale in mainland China, but that fell through as some politics got complicated with China. It just keeps on giving. It keeps going. It's in its second edition.
It's amazing. It's over around 200 copies a month or something, and that's something you've written a long time ago. It just shows you the power of books to
something like that.
Keep going.
It's usually in the top 10 of fiction writing manuals on Amazon, and usually in the top couple thousand among books in general. It's a steady seller. It's a backlist book.
Yep. And what made you write it in the first place?
That's a story. In 1987, I was renting a room from Rennie Brown, who ran the editorial department. She had been a former editor for William Morrow and Saul Stein and Day, and she started her own company. She did not read science fiction. I did. She gave me a science fiction manuscript to read just to see if it was readable, to see if the author had anything. I wrote 3 pages, single-spaced, on how the author could improve his plot. She began apprenticing me as an editor. Apprenticing is still the only way to learn editing. 5 years later, she decided to write Self-Editing for Fiction Writers, which was an expansion of a workshop she was giving at the time. That was the most common advice that beginning writers needed to hear. And she invited me in to be part of it. And between us, we wrote the book. First published in 1992 and has been going strong ever since.
So is your background in editing, or was there something that led you to doing that in the first place?
I was trying to write. No, my background is varied. I actually have a degree in philosophy, a bachelor's degree in philosophy. I worked my way through college in a glass grinding plant. I was working at a geology lab when Rennie hired me, taking courses in computer programming at Columbia University. It was the Columbia's geology lab. And as I say, I was writing science fiction, which is why she gave me the piece in the first place. But no, I have had a long, strange, weird employment history. It's nothing that any guidance counselor in high school would ever tell anyone to pursue. And as I say, the only way to learn editing is by apprenticeship. And I apprenticed under an editor who already then had 30 years of experience. So that's how I got started.
And did you have a first book which you edited first? Can you remember which one it was?
No. I remember some of the early books I edited. Some of them still stuck with me, which is a sign of their power. But no. The way you learn editing, Rennie would give me a few pages to edit, and I would edit them, and then she would come after me and edit the stuff that I had already edited and point out, where I'd missed stuff, where I'd gone too far, where I'd changed what the author intended to do. And I actually use that technique with my clients. The way I edit the manuscript is I take it 50 pages at a time. I'll edit 50 pages. I'll send them a clean copy and then invite them to edit the next 50 pages and send me a clean copy of that. And then I edit what they've already edited And by working back and forth like this, eventually I'm apprenticing them to become their own editors. And I found it an immensely useful learning technique. Usually, I often work with clients over the course of 4 or 5 different manuscripts, and usually they get down all of the stuff that's in self-editing, all of the mechanical stuff about point of view, about showing and telling, about handling interior monologue. They get that with the first manuscript. And after that, we're just working on the creative stuff. So it's a very effective learning tool.
What's interesting is I could never be an editor. I'm really bad at spelling, and I don't pick up on the things that really good people who are good at this attention to detail thing pick up. Like I just completely read past it. I've read books before where there's been mistakes in them, and I've just completely glossed over, and people have said, "Oh, why is that there?" That was one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you, because editing obviously costs money, and people want to, especially if they're self-published. So, they are working on a budget and doing everything themselves. So your book's about self-editing for fiction writers. So what does that process look like for self-editing? Let's just start from the beginning of that process.
Well, actually, I am in the same position you are as far as copy
I don't believe you. I think you're lying.
I consider what you're referring to there as copy editing, where you deal with correct usage, where you deal with mistakes, where you deal with, continuity things that get missed. I catch those where I can, but in order to be a good copy editor, you have to have an obsessive love of correct usage.
Yeah.
And that screws up an ear for good dialogue, because good dialogue is often not correct, but it's character authentic. And that's the kind of editing I do. As to techniques, it really is custom work. Every writer is different, and every writer has different techniques and different ways to approach them. A couple general principles: set it aside for a while, look at it with fresh eyes, put it in the drawer for a month, and then look at it again. A lot of the mechanical stuff is just a matter of getting it into your muscle memory. So you stop using a lot of ly adverbs. So you stop putting important action in subordinate clauses. But other than that, one of the reasons, if I could promote myself a little bit here, one of the reasons to hire an independent editor is that independent editors see all sorts of different techniques. I see writers who are trying to do all sorts of different things in all sorts of different ways, and I've been learning this for the last 40 years almost. So I can see what you're trying to do and help you get there better, even in an individualized, specific way. One of the disadvantages of using, nothing personal, of using writers as beta readers is that writers usually want to write the kind of books that they know how to write. And they read your manuscript and they tell you how to write the book the way they would have written it. An editor with a wider range of experience and a deeper grounding in all sorts of different techniques can help you write the book the way you want to write it.
Right,
but
okay.
In terms of general technique, there really isn't a lot. It's all individual.
When I listen to a lot of interviews with famous authors, people like J.K. Rowling and people like that, very famous authors, they talk about working with the editor as they're writing the book, so on an ongoing basis. What do you think about that technique?
If you have an editor who already knows your basic style and technique, that can work. If I'm dealing with a new client, someone I've never read before, I prefer to look at the whole manuscript all at once without any preconceptions. I actually ask clients not to tell me about their books when they come to hire me, not to tell me about themselves. I want to hit their manuscript with fresh eyes the way a reader would, knowing nothing about it ahead of time. I find to get a more accurate sense of what the book is like that way. And in terms of technique, I understand that J.K. Rowling is an obsessive outliner. She has outlines, she has character things. Rex Stout, who is another writer I admire, wrote one draft of everything. He sat down at the typewriter. He had no idea where it was going. He wrote one draft straight through. Either of those techniques have produced really terrific books. There's no right way to do this. I think I said in one of the articles once, I often get people want me to edit a partial manuscript to find out if they got off the rails. They lay the rails as they go.
Hmm.
I can't tell if the manuscript is working because I don't know what the endpoint is supposed to be.
So,
and that affects how you
so
get
at
there.
what stage should you be bringing in a professional editor in? Because it sounds like obviously people got different techniques. J.K. Rowling is an extreme plotter. The other writer
Yeah.
you mentioned, so I didn't know that person, but they just write and then just leave it to happen. So, what stage for someone who is maybe just not as as experienced as someone like J.K. Rowling? At what stage should they be bringing in an editor?
As I said, I do like to work with a finished manuscript with somebody new. So I'd say finish it first, even if you're confident there's something wrong with it. You don't have to polish it obsessively before you send it to an editor, because one of the gifts of editing is being able to see what the writer is trying to do. And the fact is, the sorts of things that I correct, the sorts of things that I help with most are things that the writer cannot see for themselves because they're just too close to it. So send it to me, even if you're not confident it's as good as it can be, because I can see what it can be and help you get there, probably in ways that you weren't aware of.
So
But
do you
yeah, I
think
do like to finish
that draft needs to be in a pretty much a final state, do you think? As in the writer needs to have written the book, however many, 60, 100,000 words, something like that, and then give it
Yeah.
to you. And that's the point when you'd say, get an editor in.
Yes, exactly.
And in your books, obviously you talk about self-editing. So what are those techniques that you teach to writers so they can do it themselves rather than going to an editor?
The chapters, there's 12 chapters in self-editing, and the 12 general techniques are mostly mechanical things. There are things like handling your dialogue mechanics, how often you use the word said, what verbs you should use, handling interior monologue, when and where you should italicize it and separate it from the narrative voice, and when you should have the two of them blend together. It's a lot of basic mechanical things about writing that writers need to know in order to look professional, especially beginning writers. But they are the sorts of things that you can see for yourself. I mean, you can go through your manuscript and do a search for how many times you use unusual verbs of speech, for instance, or ly adverbs, and you can find and correct those things. The sorts of things that self-editing teaches you are largely mechanical. It's how you handle your verbs of speech. It's how you handle interior monologue, when to italicize it, when to use thinker attributions like he thought, she thought. There are things that you can teach yourself to use. There are things that you can spot mechanically going through your manuscript. You can just pay attention to how many ly adverbs you use, how many ing phrases you use that move important action into subordinate clauses and kind of weaken the writing. They are things that you can do for yourself. The sort of editing that I do in the business is the more creative end, where there are things that the writers can't see for themselves because they're too close to it. But self-editing, in fact, I'd recommend that writers read self-editing before they start writing. I've had some fans of the book tell me that they read it every couple of years just to keep up on this sort of thing. But yeah, it's a good grounding in the mechanics of writing.
Yeah. Are there any common mistakes that you see writers making when they write their manuscripts? You mentioned one about putting lots of the ly adverbs in there. So I'm really guilty of that. I always say I'm really good, or I love saying the word really because I think it's quite funny. But in writing, you see it quite a lot. But yes, so apart from that, are there any other common mistakes that you see writers make? Especially, I'm thinking about more first-time writers, maybe. But
I think the thing that I correct writers most, it is in the book, is point of view. Many writers tend to get so involved with the story unfolding that they forget to track how their characters are reacting within a scene.
Okay.
There's not enough interior monologue. There is not enough shaping of the language to reflect the character's point of view. This is actually something I think a lot of writers may not think about. The words your character chooses to use reflect their history. It reflects their interests at the moment. It reflects their character. And a lot of writers tend to fall into using the kinds of words that they would use rather than the words that their characters would use. There are a couple simple mechanical techniques you can do to avoid this. One is to take a key scene, write it from the point of view of a different character. It should feel different. different details will be noticed. One of the best examples came up years ago. I think it's actually in the first edition of Self-Editing for Fiction Writers. It was a woman who is having lunch in a diner with a stranger, and she noticed that the stranger ate all her French fries, but left her little scoop of cottage cheese untouched. And that tells you about the stranger. It tells you about the person who ignored the cottage cheese. It also tells you about the narrator who noticed it. It's the sort of thing that she, would tend to notice. And that tells you something about her character. I think that's something it eventually comes to writers, but it comes later. And it will help if you start paying attention to it earlier.
One of the interesting things, I interviewed Becca Puglisi yesterday, who wrote the writers, the Emotions Thesaurus. It's basically a thesaurus for writers who are looking for building out emotions in characters. And she's got loads of other books about building rounded characters, about building fears, about building contradictions, things like that. It's a really interesting person to speak to. But when she's talking about building those rounded characters, a lot of it was about working out exactly what those characters want, like how they would react to certain situations. It's about how they would speak. So it sounds like that's the sort of thing that you would pick up, that maybe, say, for example, some writing is either out of character or maybe is starting to sound a bit neutral. That's the sort of thing you'd pick up as well.
Well, that's the danger when all of your characters start sounding alike.
Yeah.
Another technique that I recommend sometimes is take all the dialogue that one character speaks, put it together in a file, then do the same thing for another major character. Read them both all the way through, ignoring the plot, ignoring the story. Just look at the voice. The voices should be distinct. You should be able to tell the difference between the two characters just based on what they say. And if they're not, put in some more thought about who they are. Get to know them better.
Yeah. So just thinking about the different writers, like obviously J.K. Rowling has that huge plotting and the amount of work she puts into the different characters. Is there any work that you think people should do about in their characters? Do you have any techniques for building those different characters out?
Other than the ones I mentioned, again, they're all different. Every writer is different. This is how J.K. Rowling gets to know her characters. I've known writers who have just launched and started writing because they already had such a feel for their characters that they were able to inhabit their characters and just follow their stories without any forethought. They're all different. Every writer is different in the way they approach things.
Yeah. So once a writer has finished their manuscript and they're handing it to you to start that editing process, what does that editing and feedback process look like when you're working with a customer?
First step is always what I call a diagnostic reading report. I can't do any editing until I know the whole story. And if I'm asking writers to invest money in more detailed editing, they deserve to know what I think of it. Because I'm not perfect. God knows. I've found that in the healthiest editor-writer relationships, the writers take about 70% of my suggestions. And often I'll suggest something and they'll go way beyond it, and that's even better. But I'm not infallible, so they should know what I think of their manuscript and before they invest anything else. So I start with a diagnostic reading report. I don't know how commercial you want to get here. That's $2 a page, figuring 250 words to a page. After that, it's whatever they need. The diagnostic reading reports are often detailed enough that they want to rewrite a draft on the strength of it and send in a new draft. Usually in the end, we begin the line editing process where it used to be pencil on paper. Now it's largely words, track changes utility. But I actually start making the changes to voice and dialogue and things on a very, very specific basis. I've got some samples of line editing up on my website if anyone wants to see. And this is where I start working 50 pages at a time. Like I say, I edit the first 50, send it to them. The client puts in my changes, keeps the one they like, ignore the rest. Then they edit the next 50 pages and send me a clean copy. And then I edit what they've already edited. And they get a chance to see what they've changed that I've changed back, or what they may have missed. And by working back and forth like that throughout the manuscript, it's a real learning process. It's almost like having, an MFW seminar, a fine writing seminar on your manuscript alone. Also, another advantage of the back and forth is I get to tailor my editing to what they want to do. I see what I've changed and they haven't. And eventually we get much closer in our vision of the book, usually by the ending. It's a very effective technique. Anyway, that's what editing looks like.
Does your way of editing change at all when you work with different genres or niches?
Not so much with different genres, no. Actually, no. Story is story. I find myself doing the same sorts of things, whether it's a young adult or a thriller or science fiction.
Yeah. So it's a really in-depth process. It really is a bit of a back and forth between the two of you.
I would say I'm usually a little bit more forgiving of narrative summary and giving background while I'm dealing with something historical, especially about an obscure historical era or science fiction, because you got to build your world. So I bring world building techniques into science fiction and thrillers, metaphysical thrillers, vampire books and historicals in a way that I wouldn't in contemporary fiction. Other than that, probably not.
When you say you're forgiving of it, you mean that when people are writing like sci-fi or like space opera type things, where it's you need to build the world. What do you allow then that, on a normal book you'd think would be maybe a bit too much?
Well, it still has to be transparent. Readers don't have to feel like they're getting lectured about the world, that they should be taking notes before they start reading the book. Characters are shown their daily lives in more detail, the steps they have to take to fire up the spaceship that you would not show someone starting a car. Some of the odd attitudes, the opening of a historical fiction might be a situation that highlights the attitudes of the era in a way that you wouldn't have to do with a modern story, that sort of thing.
Just a quick shout out to all the romance authors out there. Now, if you're tired of shouting into the void every time you launch a brand new romance book, then let myromancereads.com do the shouting for you. They have a list of over 18,000 romance readers who love getting books when they're on discounts or on the free promotion. And it goes into their inbox every single day. It's got an amazing open rate, and every promotion gets on average over 600 clicks. That's a lot of new readers for your new series of romance books. So head to myromancereads.com where you can sign up today. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. Everything you keep saying, I keep thinking about books I've read and like how they've done that. Just then, when you're talking about historical books, I was thinking about the Robert Harris Cicero books, where in the first opening chapter they're talking about the relationship between the master and the slave, and I guess that is like how he's opening that relationship up to make you think that's what's going to be the rest of the book like.
Actually, if we can go back to J.K. Rowling for a second, I actually wrote an article on this, and it's on my website somewhere. I forget the title I used for it. But her hook in Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone, I guess it is in Britain, she breaks all the rules. It's omniscient narrator. It's narrative summary, a lot of it. And yet, by introducing the Dursley family first over on Privet Drive as being pathologically normal, by having all of this strange stuff going on in the background, she's introducing you to her world where this magic, often whimsical magic, exists and no one's aware of it. Essentially, she's like I say, she's breaking all the rules for a good hook, but she does very effective world creating just in the first few pages, with the cat who can apparently read street signs before Hagrid arrives on the flying motorcycle. It's very effectively done. It's a good example.
Yeah. I talk about it a lot because it's my favorite books, and it's always different.
Oh yeah.
It's always different how everyone else has done it, which I always find so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this has been absolutely fascinating. I mean, so could you give us a couple of examples of some of the people or types of books you've worked with and how the editing process has changed throughout you editing the book? Sorry.
Well, actually, I can't off the top of my head because they're very specific. It's just I've noticed subtle differences in emphasis in how different characters react. I've never had any glaring changes made because we usually work those out before the editing process begins. That's what the diagnostic reading report is for. And yeah, I have had some clients say, no, I'm not trying to do that. I want to do this. And then I tailor my editing so that they can do that effectively. Yeah, I can't go into details because I don't have the client's permission. And, I never say anything without permission. But I did just edit a novel in which the main character, I'm trying to think of how I can say this without revealing too much. She changes her profession at the end in a way that fits something she's always wanted to do throughout the manuscript. But she does it without her boss's knowledge. And her boss has been supportive of her. He recognizes her talent. He's been able to use it. I changed the ending so that her boss throws her out of the job because he can see that she's better than the job is. And he's the one who gets her the new job. That was a fairly substantive change that I made.
Yes, quite a drastic change.
It was based on threads that the author had already laid into the book. They were all already there. I just pulled them together at the end. And she didn't see them because she's too close to the book. This is why you hire an outside editor. And she was ecstatic about the changes that I made.
Yeah.
I actually had one of the best compliments I've ever gotten from a client was the fellow who wrote me and said, until I read your diagnostic reading report, I did not know what my book was about. Wow.
Yeah. Do you ever have any, do you have any advice for people who are maybe just first starting to work with an editor and, they're hearing some of this feedback, which may be quite painful to hear sometimes, if it's quite negative or if it's, how do you work with, what's some advice for people to work with editors who maybe are giving them advice they don't want to hear?
I have had clients who have taken none of my advice, but only
thanks for money. I'll see you later.
only one or two in the last 33 years. But part of what I do is to try and help writers see what they're missing. It doesn't always happen, and I sometimes get some pushback, but what I'm looking for is for the client to read the report or see the editing on the page and say, yeah, that's what I was trying to do. That's it. And I hope I'm going to be inspiring rather than soul crushing.
Yeah.
I do always try to be gentle. I do always try to focus on missed opportunities and strengths that the client may not have been able to see. I've actually had some clients, come to me thinking their manuscript was awful. They just felt there was something wrong with it. They couldn't find out what it is. And, I got into it and said, yeah, you cut the first 2 chapters, move chapter 5 to the beginning. It gets into it better. And they're like, oh, they actually feel better about their manuscripts having read my editing. At least, like I say, that's what I aim for. Don't always get there, but that's what I aim for.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I mean, the last question I wanted to ask was, a lot of the writers who I speak to are self-published and they maybe their first book and they don't have enough budget to get a professional editor for their very first book. Is there what would be like the one piece of advice you could give them if they were going to edit the book themselves?
Well, besides self-editing for fiction writers, I would say get fresh eyes on it somehow. Either, as I say, put it in a drawer for a month, look at it again, or have a beta reader you trust look it over. I mean, there are some beta readers have dangers. Like I say, most of them are writers. Some of them try and tell you to write the book they want to write. But a lot of them do give good advice. And if you have several beta readers and they all start saying the same thing, look at that. That's probably a good sign. If you get rejection letters and the rejection letters are all saying the same thing, look at that. When all of your readers start lining up about something, it's probably real. It's probably not just a matter of taste on their part.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Well, it's been fantastic talking to you. I know you've written hundreds of articles about editing and you've got your editing website and you've got your book, of course. So why don't you give us a bit of information about how we can read your articles and how we can get in contact?
The articles are on my website, www.davekingedits.com. Excuse me. Okay, we're going to edit this out too. I'm sitting next to the phone.
I have an editor.
I don't know if this happens in Portugal, but we get spam calls all the time. We get at least 5 or 6 calls a week from someone trying to sell us solar power. I get calls all the time about, people willing to loan me $10,000 to support my business or help me find employees. And
I've unplugged my house phone, so I don't get it quite as much.
And they usually hang up when the answering machine comes on. Okay, anyway. Where was I?
Where people can get in touch and read your articles.
Oh, yes. Well, Writer Unboxed has an archive. It's a little hard to get through. It's chronological, and you have to dig back. I have a topical index on my website, www.davekingedits.com. There's just there's a button at the top called Advice. You click on that, and you get into the topical index. And yeah, that's where I have them. I also, whenever I write an article and I'm referring to something that I've written about before, I try to link back to it. So you can often get into one of these articles and follow the chain back through other articles and get the whole background and follow the same topic all the way through. There are a couple favorites. One of them is called Fourth Ringing Tonguishness.
Fourth Ringing Tonguishness.
Fourth Ringing Tonguishness.
That sentence needs editing.
It's an exploration of the difference between using Latinate-based words and Anglo-Saxon-based words in your writing. And it goes back to a famous essay written in Analog Magazine back in the 80s by Paul Anderson, where he took standard high school atomic physics and translated all the terms into their Anglo-Saxon equivalents. And it is literally identical content, and the feel of the thing is completely different. And I read that when it first came out, and it stuck with me so long that I pulled it out and I used it for this article, and it's great fun. Fourth Ringing Tonguishness.
That's fascinating. That's a bit like
which,
that,
by the way, is the translation for expressive language.
Right. Okay. It's a bit like that. The Winston Churchill speech, "We will never surrender." Like every word of that used just Anglo-Saxon words, apart from the word surrender at the end. So
there's an example I use. If you say someone is a corporaphagous descendant of a female canine, it just lacks spunk. Actually, yeah, okay. We won't get into one of the comments when I published this on Writer Unboxed, someone asked about something, and I was reminded that the term for the name of the street in medieval England, where the stews was generally Rope Cunt Lane. that's the kind of expressiveness. Anyway, perhaps we shouldn't use that. Perhaps we should cut that out.
Perfect. Well, and also, if people want to buy your book about self-editing, where's the best place to go and get that?
Amazon, I think. It's also available in Barnes & Noble. A lot of college, as I say, it's often one of the texts used in freshman college English. Most college bookstores, I think, carry it. But yeah, I would go with Amazon.
Fine. Great. Well, it's been fantastic, fascinating talking to you. I'm looking forward to seeing the next articles from you, and thanks for coming on. We'll speak soon.
It has been all sorts of fun. I'm glad to be here. Take care.
Forthright tonguishness is a new phrase I've learned, so I'm looking forward to
Fourth Ringing Tonguishness.
See you later. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance Show. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I absolutely love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, I want to tell you about our Publishing Performance Starter Packs. These are curated episodes and collections organised by topic that makes it super easy to find the exact content you're looking for. So whether you're wanting to deep dive into marketing strategies, explore productivity techniques, or focus on any specific area of publishing, we've organised our episodes into targeted playlists just for you. And you can find these all at teddyagsmith.com. And also, whilst you're here, let me tell you about Publishing Performance. It's the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales but aren't really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books, and if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximise your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalised ad account manager to create your ad campaigns for you, to choose your best keywords and to make adjustments in real time and to optimise them over time to save you money and to make more sales. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure your investment is being used effectively And Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. You can get started with Amazon ads for free for 30 days at publishingperformance.com, and there's a link in the show notes to get that free 30 days trial. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance Show. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I absolutely love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, I want to tell you about our Publishing Performance Starter Packs. These are curated episodes and collections organised by topic that makes it super easy to find the exact content you're looking for. So whether you're wanting to deep dive into marketing strategies, explore productivity techniques, or focus on any specific area of publishing, we've organised our episodes into targeted playlists just for you. And you can find these all at teddyagsmith.com. And also, whilst you're here, let me tell you about Publishing Performance. It's the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales but aren't really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books, and if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximise your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalised ad account manager to create your ad campaigns for you, to choose your best keywords and to make adjustments in real time and to optimise them over time to save you money and to make more sales. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. You can get started with Amazon ads for free for 30 days at publishingperformance.com, and there's a link in the show notes to get that free 30 days trial.